I still remember that night because of the sound. Not voices, not at first, but the low hum of rain against the kitchen window, the kind that makes you think too much when you're alone. The house smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner, and for some reason, that smell always meant something was about to go wrong. My husband, Daniel, had left early that morning for a late meeting. I didn't ask who with. I used to. Now, I just waited for the text that said, "Don't wait up." But what I didn't expect was to hear his voice again that night, from the living room through the half-closed door. And another voice. Familiar, but not Daniel's. It took me a second to realize it was Ryan, Daniel's oldest friend. The one who'd been around forever. The one who always made jokes that lingered a little too long. And with him, Ethan, my sister's husband. They were speaking in low tones, the kind of half-whisper men use when they're not sure if they're being decent. I wasn't supposed to hear any of it, but I did. It's strange, the way people talk when they think no one's listening. They don't censor themselves. They forget to sound polite. They forget the weight of what their words can do. At first, I thought they were talking about work. Then I heard my name. "She still doesn't know," Ryan said. His voice carried that lazy confidence I'd always hated. Ethan laughed, but not kindly. "She never does. That's the thing with her. She believes everything she's told." I froze. It was me. They were talking about me. For a few seconds, my mind spun through every possible meaning. Maybe it was about the surprise Daniel had been planning months ago, the one he never finished. Maybe they were joking. Maybe no. The tone was wrong. The air felt different. Ryan lowered his voice again. "If she finds out, it won't just be him who loses everything." The rain got heavier, smearing the reflections on the window. I leaned closer, pressing my hand against the cool wood of the doorframe. I wanted to move, to stop listening, but my body wouldn't obey. Ethan sighed. "You think she suspects?" A pause. Then Ryan said, "Not yet, but she's not as clueless as she used to be." The words hit harder than I expected. They weren't cruel, exactly. Just casual, careless. As if I were a story they'd already decided how to end. And in that moment, I realized something that made my chest tighten. This wasn't about gossip. It was about something bigger. When Daniel finally came home later that night, his shirt still smelled faintly of someone else's perfume, not mine. He kissed my forehead like always, said he was tired, and disappeared in the shower. I stood in the doorway, staring at the faint light under the bathroom door, the sound of running water covering the echo of Ryan's words in my head. I wanted to ask him what they meant. I almost did. But instead, I whispered, just to the empty kitchen, "How much have you been hiding from me, Daniel?" And right then, my phone buzzed. A new message from Ryan. Ryan's message just sat there on my screen, glowing against the dark kitchen. "We need to talk. Tonight. Alone." For a long moment, I just stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply button. Ryan wasn't the kind of man who sent late-night messages. At least not to me. He'd always been Daniel's friend first, part of their old college circle that somehow never grew up. He came to our house for barbecues, called me sis, and laughed too loudly at things that weren't funny. But that night, the word alone hit different. I typed, deleted, and typed again before settling on. About what? No answer. Just the 3 dots, then nothing. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock and the steady rain outside. Daniel had gone to bed without a word, and from the hallway, I could hear his even breathing. I should have left it alone. I should have turned off my phone, gone upstairs, pretended I didn't hear those voices earlier. But curiosity, or maybe fear, kept me frozen there. I made tea I didn't drink. Sat on a couch I suddenly didn't recognize. Everything around me felt staged, like a photo of a life, not the real thing. To anyone else, Daniel and I looked fine. Married 12 years, no kids, nice house near the coast. He worked in real estate. I taught part-time at the community college. We went to dinners, smiled in pictures, said we're good when people asked. But lately there are these gaps. Pauses in conversation that used to flow. His phone always face down. The way he smiled at me. Polite, like I was a guest in his life. And then there was Ethan, my sister's husband. The kind of man who made everyone comfortable, especially my husband. He and Ryan had become inseparable lately. Always talking in corners at family gatherings, their laughter stopping the second I walked in. Now, hearing both their voices behind my back, my name on their tongues, something inside me started to shift. When Ryan finally replied, it was almost midnight. "It's about Daniel. You deserve to know." That was all. My hand shook as I read it again and again until the words blurred. You deserve to know. Know what? What could Ryan possibly tell me that my own husband couldn't? A car drove by outside, its headlights sweeping across the curtains, breaking the darkness for just a second. I stood there, heart pounding, phone still in my hand, and realized something I couldn't take back. If I answered him, there would be no pretending after tonight. No going back till we're fine. I typed 2 words, barely breathing as I hit send. "Where are you?" And then I waited. Ryan's reply came 5 minutes later. "At the old cafe by the docks. Don't tell Daniel." I don't know what I expected. Maybe a longer explanation, something to make it feel less like a trap. But that was it. Just that message, sitting there like a dare. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the clock showed 12:17 a.m. I could still back out, tell myself it was none of my business. But the truth was already pressing too hard against my ribs. I grabbed my coat, slipped on shoes, and left a note on the counter. Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive. The streets were nearly empty. The streetlights painted long, wet streaks across the asphalt. My mind kept circling the same questions. Why Ryan? Why now? What did he know that I didn't? By the time I reached the cafe, the place looked half abandoned. The sign flickered, buzzing softly, and Ryan's car was parked off to the side. I saw him through the window, head down, fingers tapping against his cup like he was keeping time with something only he could hear. When I walked in, he looked up fast, too fast, like he'd been afraid I wouldn't come. "You came," he said quietly. "You didn't leave much choice," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Ryan looked older that night. Not tired exactly, more like he'd been carrying something too long. "I shouldn't be the one telling you this," he started, then stopped. "But Daniel, he's not who you think he is." I almost laughed. "That's vague." He sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "There's something going on with him and Ethan. Business stuff. Not clean." The word business hung between us like smoke. "I don't believe you. I wish you didn't have to." He slid his phone across the table. There were messages, photos, names I didn't recognize. Bank transfers. Dates that matched nights Daniel had said he was working late. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because if this comes out," Ryan said quietly, "Ethan's in deeper than Daniel. And your sister, she'll get dragged down too." The air felt colder suddenly. My sister, Ethan, Daniel, all tied together in something I hadn't even known existed. "So what do you expect me to do?" I asked. He hesitated, eyes flicking to the window where the rain had started again, softer this time. "Just don't confront him yet," Ryan said. "Not until you know everything." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because beneath all the confusion, something else was starting to surface, a fear I didn't want to name. Not just of what Daniel had done, but of why Ryan suddenly cared so much about protecting me. I didn't sleep that night. Ryan's words kept circling my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. Daniel's not who you think he is. When the sun came up, I sat at the kitchen table, untouched coffee growing cold beside me. The house felt different, like every familiar thing now carried a question. Daniel's jacket on the chair, his keys by the bowl, the faint trace of his cologne in the air. At 7:10, he came down, tie half done, phone in his hand. "You're up early," he said, smiling. "Couldn't sleep?" I looked at him for a second too long. Something like that. He poured himself coffee, kissed the top of my head out of habit, and the gesture, that easy automatic affection, made my stomach twist. I wanted to ask him everything right there. Who are you lying to? Me or everyone else? But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I said, "You seeing Ethan today?" Daniel froze for a moment, then took a sip of coffee like nothing had happened. "Maybe." "Why?" "Just wondering." He smiled again, too fast this time, and left a few minutes later, saying he'd be home late. The door clicked shut, and for a long while I just stood there, staring at the place he'd been. That afternoon, I called my sister. She sounded distracted, happy. "Ethan's been working so much lately," she said, "but it's paying off. We might finally get that new place." Her voice was full of light, and it made me ache. She had no idea what kind of shadows were standing behind her. I almost told her almost, but something in Ryan's voice from last night stopped me. Don't confront him yet. Not until you know everything. So instead, I asked about her weekend plans. She said Ethan and Daniel were going to check on a property deal together. Out of town. I felt my throat tighten. When I hung up, I drove straight to Ryan's apartment. He looked startled to see me, but not surprised. They're leaving together tomorrow, I said. Where? He hesitated. You don't want to be part of this. Trust me. I already am. Ryan rubbed his face, exhaling hard. If you follow them, you might see something you can't unsee. Then I'll finally know. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of distant traffic filled the silence. Then Ryan nodded slowly. Fine, he said. I'll tell you where they're going. Outside, the sky was turning heavy, gray, the kind of weather that always seemed to arrive before everything breaks. I didn't know what I'd find the next day. I only knew one thing for sure. Whatever waited for me out there, it was already too late to walk away. The next morning, the sky broke open early, gray clouds stretching low over the horizon, the kind that promised rain before noon. Daniel was packing a small overnight bag. He said it so casually, just business, back tomorrow night. I nodded, tried to look half distracted, like a wife used to her husband's long work trips. Inside, my chest was pounding. After he left, I waited 10 minutes, then followed. Ryan had given me an address, a warehouse on the edge of the next town, near the water. Old shipping lot, he'd said. You'll know it when you see it. The drive felt endless. Every traffic light stretched the silence wider. I kept imagining what I'd say if I caught them doing whatever this was. But the truth was, I didn't know what I hoped to find, or feared most. When I reached the docks, the place looked almost deserted. The air smelled like salt and rust. Daniel's car was parked near the entrance, next to Ethan's black SUV. For a few seconds, I just sat there, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel until my fingers ached. Then I got out. The sound of waves hitting the rocks echoed in the distance. A single metal door was cracked open at the side of the warehouse. I stepped closer, careful, quiet, and that's when I heard them. Not Daniel and Ethan. Ryan. His voice. Inside. He was supposed to be at work. I froze, pressing against the wall. It's handled, Ryan was saying. She followed just like you said she would. Daniel's voice answered low, steady. You're sure she didn't see the messages? Positive, Ryan said. I deleted everything. My throat went dry. The world tilted. They weren't meeting behind my back. They were setting me up. I stepped back too quickly. My shoes scraped the gravel. Inside, the voices stopped. Did you hear that? Daniel's tone changed, sharp now, alert. I ran. The rain started as soon as I reached the car, fat drops splattering the windshield, blurring everything. My hands trembled so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. In a rearview mirror, I caught sight of them, both standing outside the warehouse now, scanning the lot. Ryan's phone was in his hand. A second later, my phone buzzed. A message. Don't make this harder than it has to be. From Ryan. I hit the gas. Tires screeched against wet pavement. The rain grew heavier, loud enough to drown out my heartbeat, but I couldn't stop hearing his words. She followed, just like you said she would. By the time I made it back to town, my hands had gone numb on the steering wheel. I pulled into a random parking lot and just sat there, shaking. The betrayal hit in slow waves. It wasn't just Daniel. It was Ryan, the one who'd warned me, the one who'd said you deserve to know. They made sure I found exactly what they wanted me to. And I couldn't help but wonder, what else had they planned for me to see? I didn't go home that evening. Instead, I drove until the town lights disappeared behind me, until the only sound was the steady hum of the tires against wet asphalt. My phone kept buzzing. Daniel, then Ryan, then both again. I didn't answer. By the time I stopped, I was halfway up the old coastal road, where the cliffs overlooked the sea. I'd come there before, back when Daniel and I first moved in together. It used to feel peaceful. Now, it just felt like somewhere no one could find me. When the last call came through, I let it ring out. Then my phone buzzed again, this time a message from my sister. Hey, are you okay? Ethan says you were supposed to meet them about the house thing. The house thing. The fake property deal. My stomach dropped. They'd drag her into it, too. Before I could think, I hit call. Her voice came through light, calm, unaware. Hey, what's going on? Listen to me. I cut in, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't let Ethan leave town tonight. Promise me. There was silence. Then softly, why? What's happening? I want to tell her everything, but my throat locked. Just trust me, I said finally. Stay home, please. And then another sound. Behind me. Gravel crunching. Headlights cut through the fog, washing over my car. Daniels. He stepped out, coat soaked through, eyes locked on me. You shouldn't have followed us, he said, voice low, careful. I heard everything, I whispered. You and Ryan. You used me. He ran a hand over his face, rain dripping from his hair. You don't understand. I understand enough. Then Ryan's voice came from the shadows behind him. She was supposed to think it was Ethan's deal, he said quietly. Not yours. Daniel turned sharply. You weren't supposed to come. That's when it hit me. Ryan wasn't with Daniel anymore. Not really. His voice trembled slightly. You said we were just covering the loans, Dan. But you're in deep. I'm not taking the fall for this. The air between them thickened. Daniel's eyes darted from me to Ryan, and for a moment, I saw something raw flicker across his face, fear. Don't do this, he muttered. But Ryan took a step closer. It's already done. The two men faced each other, rain pouring down around them, neither noticing me anymore. And in that moment, something in me shifted. The anger, the confusion, all of it crystallized into a strange, steady calm. You both used me, I said softly. Now you can deal with each other. I got in my car and drove away, headlights cutting through the storm. Behind me, their voices rose, sharp, desperate, until the wind swallowed them. But just as I reached the main road, my phone lit up one last time. A voicemail from Ryan. Just 3 words. By the time I pulled into the driveway, dawn was just beginning to thin the sky. The rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and quiet. The kind of quiet that feels too heavy to breathe in. The house looked exactly as I'd left it. Same porch light, same wilted plant by the steps. But nothing about it felt like home anymore. Inside, I set my phone on the counter and just stood there, waiting for something, a call, a knock, anything. It didn't come. Only the slow drip of rainwater from my coat onto the tile. When I finally gathered enough courage to play the voicemail, Ryan's voice came through rough, unsteady. He knows everything. I couldn't stop him. Get out of the house now. The message ended abruptly, a scuffle, a distant shout, then silence. I don't know how long I stood there before realizing Daniel's car wasn't in the driveway anymore. He hadn't followed me home. He hadn't called. Nothing. For hours, I waited. The police would later tell me they found an abandoned vehicle by the docks, 2 sets of footprints leading toward the cliffs, and no one after that. No signs of struggle. No Boethius. Just questions. It's been 6 months now. I moved out of that house, closer to my sister. Ethan doesn't talk about that night, and I've stopped asking. Maybe he doesn't know what really happened, or maybe he does, and silence is the only thing keeping us both from breaking. Ryan's phone was never recovered. Neither was Daniel's. Sometimes, I catch myself checking my inbox for new messages, half expecting to see his name appear again. Daniel, too. As if this was all some twisted mistake. But deep down, I know it isn't. I've learned that betrayal doesn't always arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes through quiet choices. Messages sent in the dark, lies wrapped in concern, a familiar voice saying you deserve to know. Now, when it rains, I still think about that night by the cliffs. About the 2 men who built a lie so carefully that they trapped themselves in it. I don't feel anger anymore. Just a strange kind of peace, the kind that comes when you stop needing all the answers. Maybe some truths are meant to stay unfinished. I deleted Ryan's voicemail last week, but the words still echo sometimes, right before I fall asleep. He knows everything. And maybe he did. Maybe he still does. But so do I.